If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for us. We're going to be joined in a few minutes by Greg Waddell. He does such great work over at Sleepers Media. Taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. We're going to be chatting with him about what we've seen here in the offseason with the Big Ten, why it is very interesting to take a look at these guys remaining out there in the transfer portal, these guys with NBA draft decisions, because last offseason, these guys that signed late got a bunch of money. Not happening thus far this offseason, so we're going to be touching upon that topic. We are going to be taking a look at those big-time NBA draft decisions as well, and then in the final segment, going to give you a roundup of the news and notes that we saw in college basketball on Friday. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we will fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters M, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today. We've got everything powered by EdgeBoost. Over at EdgeBoost, they do a tremendous job of making sure that bettors are able to access their funds 24/7, 365 on leap years, 366 days of the year, as they make sure that you're able to get all of these things approved because they're not running on credit or anything like that. When you go to edgeboost.bet, type in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That's going to get you a dollar for dollar match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's talk with Greg Waddell, who he is once again doing such great work over at Sleepers Media. I know that he's doing some tremendous work as well over at the Field of 68 when he gets called upon for some hosting duties as well. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at GWizzy, the number 12 altogether. And Greg, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Always great to have a fellow Greg aboard, and great to have a fellow Midwest Greg aboard as well. And Greg, right now, the biggest thing that we're taking a look at is these NBA draft decisions, because the Combine, it has just come and gone. Some guy is impressed, and then G&I Broom showed that he has a credit card vertical, so that was fun as well. But how do you take a look at these draft decisions? Because so many of these guys are in the draft process right now. They're also in the transfer portal, and in my opinion, in the next few weeks, we're going to sort of get a wave 2.0 on a lot of these guys that are going to be looking for a new team when they do pull out of the draft.
Yeah, I hope so. I think there's some guys that need to make their decision, is where I'm at, Greg. And I can speak specifically on a few names if you'd like.
But please.
I was laughing at the Combine because it felt like everyone was racing to do a scoops off by asking players participating in the Combine if they're serious about the Combine. Like, respectfully to all these great reporters, some of whom, like, I'm personally big fans of and friends with, like, it didn't feel like breaking news to hear that LeBaron Philon feels all in on the process. Like, I get that it is news that he's not going back to Alabama, and some of these were real tidbits, but some of these are just like, yeah, Cedric Coward, I feel good about this. I'm trying to go pro. It's not news. Like, of course you're trying to go pro. You're at the Combine. So I don't know. NIL is kind of in a weird spot because there's a lot of coaches who like have one big star spot remaining and X amount of millions of dollars offered to one player for that spot. And that player has their whole season hanging in the balance until they make their decision. And that's Duke with Cedric Howard right now. That's Michigan with Axel Lendeborg. It was Florida with Boogie Flan before he bowed out. I give him credit for actually like not wasting anyone's time and hopefully making a decision here soon. And there's guys like RJ Lewis and Otega Owe that are still going through the process. But I don't know. To me, maybe this is just the college basketball fan in me. I feel like some of these players know what they're doing and are just enjoying the spotlight. And it's kind of forcing everyone to be in a waiting period, letting them have their moment at the Combine until we can figure out what's the next step.
And how much do you think that it's actually strategic on some of these guys as well? Because we saw late in the process last year, someone like a great Osibor, he did not sign right away, and he got a big giant bag from Washington because Washington wasn't able to spend money on like anyone else. They whiffed on everyone, so they gave it to great Osibor. We saw that also with Coleman Hawkins being able to get the most money that he could out of Kansas State, and I think that that's a little bit of a part of this as well.
I think you're right, but I don't know. I don't know that I believe it'll work the same this year. I think it's evolving so much every year, and we're already seeing some guys who thought that they were doing that not get the money they're asking for, maybe not getting money they would have gotten a month ago. Des Claude and PJ Haggerty being two of those. Like, I mean, let's just be real. NC State signed Trey Holloman for like $1.8 million, and now PJ Haggerty's trying to get $4. PJ Haggerty's worth double Trey Holloman, for sure. No one's paying him it. So, I don't know why. That guy was the best shooting guard in the sport last year. I think there's just a lot of schools that realize what this NIL bubble has become. And even if they have the money, I don't think schools or even coaches, programs, whatever you want to define it as, I don't think they like being strung along at the hands of players and their agents. And I think you're seeing some teams that are being smart prepare some backup plans. Like with Duke, with Cedric Howard right now, I mean, they're looking at Dame Sarr as a backup plan. I don't know that Michigan has a backup plan for Yaxel Lendeborg. I think they need one. I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the final month of this.
Oh, it is going to be a lot of fun. And man, there's a lot of decisions out there, and it's going to cause for a big giant ripple effect on the sport. As Greg Waddell, who does such great work over at Sleepers Media, he's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And certainly a lot of these decisions are going to be impactful for the Big Ten as well. We've got a few guys that are sort of in wait and see mode as well. But I really do think that for the Big Ten, out of all these conferences, they've had the best offseason because we saw the three real big coaching moves that were made over at Iowa, Minnesota, and Indiana. I am a fan of all three of those. And then additionally, the way that these teams have been able to rebuild, like your school over there at Michigan, I absolutely love what they're bringing to the table right now with Lendeborg and company. Obviously, a few question marks out there, but still feeling relatively good about that. I really think that this conference did a nice job of just being all in this offseason, and they've really gotten with the times with the transfer portal.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts in the Big Ten. When you have so much coaching turnover, obviously there's a lot of differences and new freshness to it all. Add in the fact that there's still 4 schools that are going on their second year in the conference, and it certainly feels different than the Big Ten has ever felt. But I agree, as a whole, I think a lot of these teams feel better about their program going into next season than they did last season. Teams either figuring out how NIL works or making a change at the top that they think has really shifted the direction going forward. So Indiana fans are certainly happy right now. I think Iowa fans are just ready for something new at the end of the Fran McCaffrey era, and they got a great coach stepping right in there. I think schools like Purdue, even at the very top of this, feel they're righting their wrongs from last offseason, filling in some cracks with portal players that they didn't, going to the international trail for the first time. And then you've got like Brad Underwood, who just signed an extension and thinks he's found the golden ticket in college hoops and is going all in on his approach that no one else is. So there's a bunch of contrasting styles in this league that I think makes them a little bit unique compared to even an SEC or a Big 12. I think in the Big 10, not just play styles, but the ways people run their program are so different from each other. And on an annual basis, it can change who makes the right move and who makes the wrong move.
Yep, no question about it. And the Big Ten is certainly going to be just an interesting landscape in general, because I think that's fair to say Purdue, even though they really didn't make wholesale changes, they bring in Oscar Clough, but I mean, running back those guys is so big. And we talk about all the great moves that are being made by these teams in the offseason. I think a lot of times, as the great Trilly Donovan says, sometimes the best pickups are your own. And a school like Purdue, I think that they come in just in such good form with the fact that you've got such a star-studded backcourt. You've got so much chemistry that is coming back, something that very few teams are going to have this year.
Yeah, you're right. Retention matters. We know this. And I think teams are still figuring out how to do retention in the NIL era. Even the very best Hall of Fame type coaches, I think, are going through challenges and figuring out how much is overkill and what's the baseline, what's the minimum that you need. Matt Painter's done a great job, probably as good of a job as anybody this year of threading the needle. I mean, it helps when, you talk about returning. Who are you returning? It's not just returning a quantity of players. He's returning 3 guys that started in a national championship game 2 seasons ago. I mean, how rare is that? Normally, any program that would make it that far, it's rare to have 3 guys that are sophomores starting in a national championship game that won't end up in the NBA in 2 years. And Painter's done a magnificent job. Not only did he keep them, he kept them out of the portal. They didn't even entertain any additional options. God knows what type of money Trey Kaufman-Renn or Fletcher Lawyer could have commanded if they went. Braden Smith certainly would have been the highest paid player in the portal if he entered the portal. So he's done an awesome job. I'm excited to watch Purdue this season. Final Fours in Indianapolis, and I think it would be only fitting if the Boilermakers could get back there in Braden Smith's final year.
Oh, that certainly would be a lot of fun, and I think that Purdue, certainly it's looking rock solid for them being at the top of the Big Ten, but how do you look at schools not named Purdue? Because I think that it's very hard to have any team superseding them as of right now in the Big Ten, because I do feel like that middle of the conference, as it seemingly always is, it's a little bit of a hodgepodge, and then you have your few top teams, you've got that big giant middle tier, there's going to be a few teams at the bottom, I'm sorry, but it does look like it might be a little bit rough for Rutgers this season, but that said, how do you take a look at just this entirety of the middle of the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think it's hard to just define the middle of the Big Ten because there's so many ways to slice up this 18-team conference, quite frankly. I think outside of Purdue, there's roughly 4 to 5 teams that will feel like they are in the mix with Purdue to compete. And it includes Michigan. It includes UCLA. I love the Donovan Dent ad there. It includes Illinois with all of these 24-year-old Balkans that they've added. And then I think Wisconsin's lurking. Bringing back John Blackwell, that's another team that retained a good amount of things.
Iowa, I think, is so interesting.
Yeah, Iowa's another one where it's going to be so different that you don't know, right? Bennett Sturts may be the best player in the league. It's totally possible that that's an outcome. At the same time, they're losing a lot, right? And Fran got a really bad rep down the stretch of his career. We're 4 years removed from Fran McCaffrey building a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament with a couple lottery picks in back-to-back years. So I don't know. I feel like you could talk yourself into basically any team in the middle of the pack in this conference, and I would entertain the argument for it. It's just kind of choosing what flavor of the middle of the pack you want.
Oh, absolutely. It is so much fun to take a look at this Big Ten because there's so many ways to be able to go about it. And you know as well as I do that when you get those great home court advantages, that's going to be a great equalizer between some of these teams. And you're going to get some madness out there in the conference as Greg Waddell does such great work over at Sleepers Media, showing me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And now let's take a little bit more of a look nationally because I know that you guys over at Sleepers Media, you've been teaming up with a lot of the guys over at Heat Check CBB this offseason, and you guys are doing some great previews outside the Big Ten. Are there a few schools that you look at that are sort of under the radar a little bit and you just like the moves that they've made here in the offseason?
You know, that's a good question. I think the same way that I'm praising Purdue, this isn't like an under the radar team by any means, but I think UConn has done a very similar job of righting their wrongs from a year ago. I really hated the way Dan Hurley approached last offseason. I thought he approached it like his doesn't stink. And I thought it's the reason that UConn didn't hang a banner. They didn't compete for a Big East championship in the tournament or the regular season, and they were bounced by the round of 32. They were good at times. They were also very bad at times, and there were holes. And I was very curious how he was going to approach trying to fill those holes. He didn't really waste any time addressing the backcourt. I love the Demery ad. I think they've got multiple guys there, even the Malachi Smith for depth, multiple guys that are ready in a way they just didn't in the backcourt last year. Bringing back Solo Ball is a great piece of retainment. Bring back Alex Caravan, maybe the best piece of retainment in the entire country. You know, Terrace Reed's a guy that I think they could have gone either way on. There were rumors that Dan Hurley wasn't sure if you wanted to bring him back, but at his best, he was phenomenal last year. And now you sprinkle in a fringe 5-star recruit in Eric Ryby, who I think kind of has shades of Donovan Clingan. Suddenly they feel like a team that is a national title favorite yet again. And it's a credit to Hurley for sort of going back to the well that he refused to go in a year ago.
Yep, no question about it. And I mean, clearly the Ada Mahaney ad was not great for them, and I think that he's going to be great at UC Santa Barbara. I just thought that that was a system that really didn't fit him in general. There was a little bit of a swing and miss on that front, and with UConn, I think that it's going to be so interesting. Obviously, we're going to have some fun seeing with Houston. All those pieces are coming back, what they're going to be able to do, and a group of guys that they just run it back every single year. They always provide great insights. They're always on top of everything in college basketball. That'd be you guys over at Sleepers Media, and Greg, I know you're doing doing a tremendous job as one of the headliners on that great network. You're doing such great work taking a look at everything here in the offseason. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
I appreciate it, Greg. Always fun. You can find us at Sleepers Media or the Sleepers Media YouTube channel. We're posting like 15 to 20 videos a day, even in the offseason, breaking down all the chaos leading up to the NBA draft and transfer portal. Thanks for having me, Greg.
Absolutely. Greg is doing such an amazing job. Take a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. And every single time he joins me, runs great insight. So big thanks to Greg for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VC Family Podcast. Coming up next, let's round up the news and notes in college basketball we saw over the last 24 hours. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. It was great to be able to get Greg Waddell aboard. He does such an amazing job. Taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. Did so once again today. So a big thanks to Greg for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. They give you a recap of the news and notes we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours. We have seen a few NBA draft decisions come on down the pipeline, as it appears as though Drake Boom Boom Powell, last season he was over at North Carolina. He was only averaging 7.5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game, was a little bit of a flopperoonie. He is going to be staying in the NBA draft. You've got LeBron Fillin, who it appears as though he's going to be entering into the NBA draft, and he is going to be staying there as well. Was a solid starter over at Alabama. Thomas Orber, I thought, was going to be staying in the NBA draft, 14.5 points, 8.5 boards per contest over at Georgetown, and then Carter Bryant. It sounds as though he is going to be staying in the NBA draft as well, despite the fact that he was only averaging about 6.5 points per contest over at Arizona. So those are four big-time moves that we are seeing. I know that Cedric Howard, it's sounding like he's probably going to be staying in the NBA draft as well, but that is one that is yet to be confirmed. That is one where we still have some question marks there, so we're going to be keeping you guys abreast of all these updates as we get them, and we have to keep you guys updated on everything that's happening in the transfer portal, as well as you've got Cannon Carlisle, who was over at Indiana this last season, was a big giant flop for them. He averaged 4 points per contest, and this guy had just a really good run towards the beginning part of the 2023-24 season when he was over at Stanford. He was putting up like 20-point games. He averaged that season 11.5 points, right around about 2.5 assists per contest during that season. He's heading on over to Florida Atlantic, and this is a nice upside get for Florida Atlantic. You're bringing in a top 100 guy, a guy that he certainly is going to be able to fit that system, and that he's a high-octane just shooter in general. Now, defense obviously leaves a little bit of something to be desired with him, but I mean, that was the entirety of Florida Atlantic last season. They were one of the worst three-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball, so he's going to be fitting in right over there in the great state of Florida. And for Florida A&M, has not necessarily been a rambunctious offseason for them. They bring in Maxim Luke, who was over at Oregon State, not necessarily a big-time player down low for them. Devin Williams, who was on the bench for UCLA down low as well, and Isaiah Elam, he was over at USC this past season. So being able to add something like this, very, very big for a team that they do lose quite a bit of that backcourt from a season ago. So I do like this one. You had a Division II man, Dimitri Gardner. He was averaging 23.5 points per contest, one of the best overall scorers out there at the Division II level over at Augusta. He has decided that he is going to be going to Fordham, a big-time pickup for Mike Magpio, and Mike Magpio has been just absolutely dominating here in the transfer portal. He gets one of the best D2 players in all of college basketball, brings with him a few guys from UC Riverside, Rikus Schultz, along Jack Whitborn, not guys that are going to be like tremendous players or anything like that, but Chase Howard, a former top 150 recruit who was over at Michigan last season, he's coming on over. Christian Henry was a double-figure scorer over at Eastern Michigan. Lewis Lesmond is a high upside guy. Akira Jacobs, he's a 6'9" player that comes on over from Hawaii, double-figure scorer. Deshaun Reeves from Iona. This is a really nice collection. I do think that Fordham is going to be able to hit the ground running in that Make by Pio era, so I really like what they're doing over there. I like this one as well. You've got Jan Farrell, who was over at Sacred Heart this last season. I know that he began his career over at St. Bonaventure, a little bit of a long and winding road for him last season, was averaging about 5 points per contest. He's saying 6'6" is capable of popping threes, not necessarily the world's greatest three-point shooter, but He is capable of being able to do so. He is signed over at Sacred Heart, and this should be able to help out the defense of Sacred Heart, which is very big because they have not been so great with that regard. And for Sacred Heart, they've always been good with regards to their versatility. This past season, having someone like an Anquan Hill, who was standing north of 6'7", being able to pop it from 3-point range, Tanner Thomas, guys like this, they always have that good versatility. He fits right in with what they're going to be looking to do. So I think that this is a massive pickup for a Sacred Heart team that over the last 72 or so hours, maybe they'll bring in some nice guys. Deshaun Giddens is coming on over from Florida International as well. Mekhi Connor is someone that was on the roster last year. It looks like they're going to be getting him back as well. So this has been a solid offseason thus far for Sacred Heart. Need a little bit more depth, but you know what? Things are trending in the right direction there. Tony Duckett, he was over at San Diego this past season, was averaging 10.5 points, just under 2 assists per contest. He was on San Diego last season and was one of the only guys on that team that could hit a shot, as they were just absolutely awful on the offensive side of things. But you know what? Mr. Duckett, he was shooting about 34% from 3. He's decided he is going to be going to St. Mary's. Now for St. Mary's, a very curious pickup for them because he obviously knows the WCC very well. And with regards to St. Mary's team, not necessarily a team that picks up a whole bunch of guys via the transfer portal. It could be a little bit of a microwave score for them. We saw St. Mary's absolutely dominate on the glass. This guy is at 6'5", able to be relatively versatile there. He didn't show off a lot of rebounding when he was over at San Diego, but I think that that's a byproduct of, well, Steve Lyman not necessarily being the world's greatest coach, but that said, for St. Mary's, I do think that they get themselves a relatively solid pickup there. Haven't really seen a lot out of St. Mary's via the transfer portal thus far, as they're also picking up Jazz Gardner from Pacific, so some shrewd moves there. So we shall see if there's going to be a little bit more to come on that front. There is something to come on this front, though, as you've got yourself one of the best teams in all of college basketball heading on over to Lemoyne. Tennessee Rainwater, last season when he was over at Utah Tech, was averaging 6 points, 3 boards at 6'6". He tried to shoot some threes, did not necessarily go so well for him, but over at Lemoyne, I think that this could be a nice place for him to be able to show a little bit of domination out there at the NEC level. It's one of the, shall we say, lesser conferences in all of college basketball, and there's not necessarily a ton of size in the NEC, so I think that this is going to be a good way for him to be able to build up his stock, be able to grab a few rebounds. Obviously, very interesting name to say the least. And for Lemoyne, they're also bringing in Ja'Kai Sanders, who's over at St. Peter's. He's going to be able to help out that backcourt. So I do like the 2 moves that Lemoyne has made thus far. Probably going to need to add a little bit more to be fully competitive this season, but steps in the right direction. You've got Josiah Davis, who was over at Niagara last season, 9.5 points, right around about 3 assists per contest. He has decided that he is going to be heading on over to CSUN, Cal State Northridge, and for Davis, actually began his career over at Tennessee Tech. Was limited just 22 games last season. He was dealing with a little bit of ailment, so that was a little bit less than tremendous there, but a guy that is able to be a relatively good distributor of the ball. Not a guy that you necessarily want popping it from 3-point range, a career about 24.5% 3-point shooter, but at 6'3" is pretty big for a primary ball handler. Actually began his career over at West Virginia as well, so I think that this is going to be nice for a CSUN team that they look for all that versatility. They always look to be able to dominate on the glass. He should be able to help them out with that. Hampton was really looking to be able to build up their front court last season, but left something to be desired in the backcourt. They're looking to address that here in the offseason as they pick up Cody Williams, who was over at Hawaii this past season, shot 37.5% from 3-point range, put in there about 7 points per contest. Not a guy that's going to be like a Swiss Army knife of versatility or anything like that, but someone that can go into Hampton. He's going to be able to give them just a little bit of a boost out there in the backcourt in general. I think that this is very big for them, especially with them losing a lot of those pieces from that backcourt that were relatively rock solid, and they've done a nice job of being able to bring in some talent. Christian Watson is a former top 200 recruit with a little bit of a flop at Southern Miss, but Southern Miss was just a flop in general. He began his career over at Miami. Michael Ealy was a double-figure scorer 2 seasons ago over at Siena, so I do think that Hampton is certainly heading in the right direction. I think that this is a very good pickup for them. I think that this is a pretty rock-solid pickup as well, as you've got Max Picard. He was over at St. Louis this last season. 6'11" big man. Really just wasn't able to see a lot of minutes. It was the St. Louis team that they didn't want to play their bench really at all, but he has decided he is going to be heading on over to Southern Illinois, and I think that this is a nice little bit of an upside gift for them. If you look at Picard and him coming out of high school, was not necessarily a guy that was super duper highly touted or anything like that, so we shall see what the upside is going to be for him. Not a guy that's necessarily going to be popping it and locking it from 3-point range or anything like that, but he's going to be able to come in, give a Southern Illinois team that had a little bit of a lack of size down low to say the least, a little bit of that. Scott Nagy looking to be able to implement his system after he had a lot of success at right safety for many, many years. And you could tell in the second half of the season for Southern Illinois, things got so much better, and you've got a bunch that is going to be very versatile this season. Isaiah Stafford, who missed the entirety of last season with foul praise, so 2 seasons ago, was a 14-plus point per game scorer. He comes in. Corral Ron House, he was over at Jacksonville State and part of that really, really good just team in general with regards to their rebounding. He's coming in as well, so I do like these pickups that are being made there, and I do think that there's a lot of upside on that front. And then you've got Justin McBride. He was over at Nevada this last season, average about 8 points per contest, a little bit over 4 boards, a 6'7", do it all sort of dynamo. He's going to be heading on over to James Madison, and for James Madison, I feel like they got a little bit of a slow start in the transfer portal, but after that slow start, things have been very good for them. And with McBride, if I'm not mistaken, he was beginning his career over at North Texas as well, so he's been with a few relatively solid programs, not necessarily the power conference level, but obviously very, very noted conferences in general. Not a guy that's going to really light you up from three. Tries to shoot threes, but his career about 25.5% three-point shooter, so he's going to leave a bit of something to be desired there. But for James Madison, I do feel like this is more of a team that is built in the image of their coach in Preston Spradlin. After in season number 1, it did feel like the defense was a little bit more wonky. They've been able to hit this side of things a little bit more. They bring in a nice primary guard in Cliff Davis from UT Rio Grande Valley, Bradley Douglas, who comes on over from Georgia Southern. Haven't necessarily added a lot of size, but they have been able to add a lot of guys in general that are going to defend you. They're a part of slower, shorter systems in general, so I do like this pickup for James Madison. What I love is being able to share this information of college basketball with you guys daily. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Go Seeps, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And big thanks once again to Greg Waddell, does such great work over at Sleepers Media, for joining me in the last segment, coming at you guys every single day throughout the year on this podcast, regular season and off season. So I'll be back to you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.